the person that I'm going to call next, people, is, I mean, he's amazing. As Toastmaster Mark Brown has already mentioned, this guy has been a part of Toastmasters for 27 years, and he is just not giving up. He is so keen on leading all of us that he has led several departments at world headquarters of Toastmaster International. He works closely with international president and the board of directors to develop strategic plans and goals for us. We may not know him personally, but that guy sitting thousands of miles away from us cares about us so much. And what he's gonna say? Well, that's up to him. I'm not gonna introduce him that way. You are going to listen to him and understand him by yourself. And why I'm saying that is because literally Toastmaster Mark Brown has left me with zero words, and I am unable to muster any more words in my mind, and I don't think I will be able to for the rest of this session. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Daniel Rex. It is Toastmasters today.
Thank you. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. It is a privilege to be with you. If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. I want to make sure my mic is working. Fabulous. Well, my dear friend Mark Brown, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for a little bit of our history together. When I realized you're going to be speaking today, I thought it's a beautiful thing, but also a difficult thing, because Mark is so talented and so thoughtful and connects with our Toastmasters world so very well. Thank you, Mark, for those inspiring words and for sharing part of your story and your heart with us. You're my brother. In Toastmasters, I have a friend of 25 years from Ireland, and he is fond of little expressions, as the Irish are. One that he has shared with me many times, and he calls it an Irish blessing. It is, may you live in interesting times. And my Toastmasters friends, these are indeed interesting times that we live in. 2020, who could have imagined that 2020 would be like it is? It has changed all of our lives in deep, fundamental ways. The way that we work, the way that we communicate, the way that we interact with our families. What a change this year has been. I've put 3 words together that I'll share with you tonight, 3 concepts that describe for me this year, 2020. The first is unusual. This is not a normal year. The second is terrible. This is a very difficult year for so many of our fellow humans on this planet. And the third word is beautiful. This world is beautiful, and our people are beautiful in so many ways. Let's talk about unusual for a moment. And if you can, enter into the chat ways in which you think 2020 is unusual. Well, here we are at this conference. We're meeting online. We're using Zoom as a tool. Most of us a year ago hadn't heard of Zoom. Most of us couldn't have imagined that this meeting would be online rather than in person. What a change, what an unusual year. And now these things have become almost normal for us. Sometime near the end of March, I went to a market near my home. And for the first time, I put one of these on. Wearing a mask was very unusual for me then. And now putting the mask on feels normal. Having the mask off when I'm out of my house feels very unusual to me. What strange times we live in. I've never been someone who liked to work from home. I've enjoyed going to my office, working with people, having conversations, having the ability to stand next to someone and relate. Well, that's not happening. It's been since the middle of March, the last time I was at my office. And you can see I don't have my Toastmasters pin on my jacket today because it's in a drawer in my office and I don't have access to it. What strange times. What unusual times we live in. On a personal note, my two university-age sons have been living at home for the last 2 months and taking their classes online. Very unusual, but quite nice to have them living with us. This year is also terrible. Millions of people have been infected by this virus. This pandemic has torn apart friendships and families and communities with illness and death. What a terrible thing for humanity to experience. The near collapse of global trade and economies has affected hundreds of millions of people and their livelihoods. People are without work. Some people are without food and are struggling to meet the day-to-day needs of human existence. What an awful time for us. The prices of some goods are going down because of low demand. Petroleum is less expensive. Other goods, household goods, food, other staples have become more expensive. And those who could least afford price increases are those who are most affected by it. Lastly, in the terrible is the awful rhetoric, the things that appear on the news, the negative images, the negative talking that bombards us throughout the day if we allow it to bombard us. And the result of this is a mental health crisis worldwide. People are depressed. People don't understand in many ways and in many places how to manage themselves through this crisis. And finally, and hopefully, and best of all, beautiful. This year has been beautiful. Think of teachers learning about different ways to connect with students and teaching them remotely. The knowledge that's created, the relationships that are happening now in different ways. These things are indeed beautiful. Technology solutions are leaping forward. We're able to pay without touching. We can order things, food, goods, have them delivered, or pick them up outside of a market using apps. These are opportunities that we had not leveraged before or that were not available to us before. Beautiful things. Cooperation and collaboration is working well in many places. In the Toastmasters world, I've seen it. I've witnessed cooperation where before there was difficulty. It's important that we work together, that we stick to our core values of integrity, respect, service, and excellence. There's no place for negative talk in Toastmasters. Our leadership must be positive. Our leadership of self, our leadership of others, in the way that we approach and seek leadership roles. Understanding and patience have in some places increased. 2 weeks ago, I was standing in a queue outside of a market waiting to enter the building. The queue was probably 25 or 30 minutes long. As I was waiting, I saw an older woman approach. She saw the length of time that it would take to stand to enter the building, and she decided to leave. She turned to walk away. There was a young man there whose responsibility it was to manage the queue. He approached her, spoke quietly with her for a moment, and then escorted her through the door of the market and inside so she could complete her tasks. Many of us in line applauded the ingenuity, the goodness, the rightness of this young man for choosing to help someone in need. Where I live, there are what we call food banks. These are places where the poor and less fortunate can go and seek food for free to take home to their families. In the early weeks of the pandemic, these food banks were depleted. There was no food for those who typically went there to seek food because so many more were in need. Since then, thousands upon thousands of people who are able have contributed of their means, food and finances, to support those who are in genuine need. It's an amazing thing to watch the goodness that has happened in the world and the beauty. And I hope that each of us experiences this beauty, both by receiving it and by giving it. Well, what about Toastmasters? How is our organization doing? I remember the early weeks of February of this year. I had just returned from a trip to China where I had visited clubs in this province of Sichuan. What a beautiful place and what an amazing group of Toastmasters we have in China. But soon after my return, I started to hear more of this illness, this pandemic. And in the space of about 2 weeks, many of our clubs in Central China, Division W and District 88 stopped meeting and then started meeting online, all in the space of 14 days. This reaction, this recovery, this beautiful thing happened around the world as the pandemic spread and as communities closed, as people stayed indoors with their families. The Toastmasters community went from meeting in person, from shaking hands, from embracing, to seeing each other online, using the reactions and the applause and the thumbs up of Zoom, and inventing all sorts of new skills. Now around the world, Toastmasters clubs are meeting online. More than 11,000 of the 16,000 clubs have reported to us that they're meeting online. Club officers, please, if you have not yet gone to Club Central and reported your meeting style and schedule now, please do so. We want to be aware of all the clubs that are meeting online, and the organization will choose to recognize these clubs in a special way this year. What an amazing new skill set has emerged through this odd opportunity. Today, I can see a timer, I can see a technical lead, I can see timing appearing visually. It is a set of skills that has emerged into the Toastmasters world and been built. It's not been easy. Some of us thought that technology was not our thing, that we were not friendly to it, and it was not friendly to us. And yet, we're hearing from clubs around the world that members who physically could no longer travel to meetings have returned to their clubs and are now rejoining Toastmasters and meeting with them from their home and meeting online and experiencing once again the beauty of the Toastmasters community. So I would encourage you, encourage all of our clubs to continue to grow this community. In times of economic difficulty like now, Toastmasters as an organization, our clubs around the world, tends to thrive. This year, this challenge is different because we're not meeting face to face. And some of us might think that people are not looking for opportunities to build their skills or to network, or we might not understand how to ask them to join when they're meeting online. All of these issues can be solved and have been solved by clubs around the world. Back in April, the organization's board of directors was quite concerned. Membership had dropped quite significantly, almost 35%. And as a global trend, that was alarming. I'm glad to say that the organization has rebounded. And now our decrease for the calendar year is around 14%. And any other year, 14% would be a terrible change. But 14% this year feels quite good. Toastmasters is strong. Toastmasters is building new skills, and Toastmasters is growing. The world of tomorrow, the world of today, needs our skills. I bet your club has a Zoom master. In my club, we call that person the sheriff. They welcome guests, they ensure good behavior, and they deal with any bad behavior that might come up. In our club meeting, we typically had 25 people at every meeting when it was meeting in person. Now, we have 35 to 40 people because members and guests from around the world join our club every Wednesday at 12 o'clock midday Mountain Time here in Denver, Colorado. What a beautiful solution the members of my club have created. What an excellent job our club officers and our club members are doing to sustain and build the community of Toastmasters. But what about us individually? We have our personal lives to deal with, our families. We lead ourselves. We might be leaders in our community, leaders at work, and leaders in Toastmasters. How do we manage the challenges of a year like 2020? A couple of weeks ago, I was on a call with friends and colleagues from the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. We were talking about leadership in this time of crisis. It was a very interesting conversation led by people who have dedicated their lives to studying how leaders function. The most important concept that they shared with us, that their research is showing week by week, is how critical it is for leaders to create a safe place for team members. Now is the time as leaders to be understanding, to know that the world is different, to be caring, to create the place where our team members will perform in the highest and best possible way. Now is not the time for anger. Now is not the time to look only to the final goal. Now is the time to build strength and to create the organization of tomorrow. One of the lecturers at this session asked each of us to write down 2 words, and I'll ask you to write these down, jot them in the chat, or both. And this one word is in response to a question. The first question is, how has this pandemic positively affected you? Now that's an interesting one, isn't it? How has this pandemic positively affected you? And the second question, how has this pandemic challenged you or negatively affected you? I was intrigued by the responses of my 30 colleagues in this discussion. Most of the positive responses related to diligence, collaboration, resilience, teamwork. And many of the challenges related to too much to eat, too much downtime, a sense of isolation. Those are the ways we've been challenged. Well, as leaders and Toastmasters, we're challenged every day. We are challenged for these meetings. We are challenged for our club meetings. The district leaders were challenged to understand how to conduct elections online and to do so effectively. But Toastmasters can rise to the challenge. That's what we do. We accept challenges, we figure out how to overcome them, we look to the future, and we make the world a better place. Sometimes that better place is just in our hearts. Many times it's within our teams, our Toastmasters friends, our Toastmasters greater community, our families, the communities in which we live, where we work, and the entire world. In closing, my challenge to you is make the world a better place. Whether it's a very small piece of the world or a large piece of the world, Toastmasters has given each of us so very much. Let us take what we've been given and share it with the world. Madam MC, back to you.
Thank you, Toastmasters Daniel. It's amazing. I'm truly honored to listen to you, and it's you guys. What are you guys doing? I mean, come on, man. You guys are leaving me with no words at all, and I'm at a loss. I'm supposed to be the MC here, and I don't know what to say. There's nothing that I can come up with, and my mind is like, too much greatness, too much awesomeness. You cannot come to that level.